Look at this. It's supposed to do that. This is the Osmose from Expressive E, a very unique synthesizer. I'm very honored that they sent me one early. There's a lot of amazing things about it, but the most unique thing is that it's got these wiggly keys, which I feel like every keyboard player I've ever talked to has dreamed of this. When I was a kid playing the piano, my piano teacher would tell me to stop wiggling my hands around because that's just what they wanted to do whenever I rested on some notes. And on a normal piano, you can't wiggle the notes, which is called vibrato, by the way. On a synthesizer, you'll usually have a modulation wheel, sometimes a touch strip, but this is limiting because if you're using it for vibrato, you can't assign it to something else. And also, whenever you're doing vibrato, this hand can't play. So this is a very special day for me, and I'm excited to get to know this instrument. I'm in love. I've spent the last couple months making so much music with this instrument, and it is so inspiring. Let's talk about what makes Osmose so special. It's an MPE instrument, meaning every note gets its own individual expression. So for instance, if I hold down two different notes, I can adjust their brightness individually. I could add some vibrato to just the top note. I could do pitch bends on just the top one. Lots of people have approached MPE keys in lots of different ways. The Rolly lineup is like keyboards made of mushy rubber. The HUANG Continuum is a completely flat playing surface made out of what I heard was scuba suit material. Also, fun fact, HUANG is actually responsible for the sound engine in the Osmose. But for me, all I've ever wanted is a normal keyboard where you can wiggle the keys for pitch bend. And now we have that. That alone is worth the price. But besides the wiggly key thing, there are also so many little innovative things that Expressive E have built in here that just make it so much more expressive and creative than other synths. Let me show you a few of the gestures that are possible with it. So we've already talked about the wiggle. You can move the keys left and right to do pitch bends, and you can set the range of those pitch bends up to 96 semitones, which actually gets crazy. And you can adjust the sensitivity of that and what they call stabilization, which is like when you first hit the note, is it going to be perfectly on, or do you want it to start tracking any little side-to-side movement right away? But then you also get a different response depending on how hard you tap the keys. And this isn't just your usual MIDI velocity. There's like a difference between fading into a note, gently pressing it, or what they call tapping it. So here's a tap. You can hear there's like a good strong attack to that sound, but if I just gently press down on a key, it's the same synth preset here, and it has a totally different attack because of how I play it. So that softer fading in movement they're calling pressure. It's similar to aftertouch, which a lot of synths have, but they also have an aftertouch here. So here's me using pressure, the first part of pressing down a note. And then about halfway down, I kind of hit this, feels like a little pillow or something underneath the key, and I have to press a little bit harder to then access the aftertouch. So it's kind of like you have two different levels of aftertouch, and you can hear with this sound, the aftertouch brings out these higher harmonics in the sound. Now, one final gesture, and not every sound has this, but some of them do, there is a note off. So if you release a note fast enough, you hear how there's like an extra little bell ding on the end of that? That is the note off gesture, and if I release less quickly, I get a nice fade out compared to having that little bonus note. So those gestures were all to do with individual notes, but there's actually an additional one that is to do with gliding between two different notes. So let me show you that here. If we go to this playing menu, we can select pressure glide. And then here, if I'm fully releasing a note before playing the next one, it just goes to that next pitch. But if I start pressing the next one before I've released the previous one within the interval set here, it will glide to that pitch. And you can set this to a bunch of different intervals. After an octave, it starts moving in just octaves, and then you have the full keyboard as well that you can set, so. I do find that for larger intervals, your hand movement has to be pretty smooth because any little jitteriness will translate into how smooth that glide is. I'm actually doing really well right now, so. But there were times where I'd be trying to get that perfect glide in and it would wobble a little bit, and you know, it's an instrument, you gotta practice it. So with all of these different gestures and settings and the huge range of sounds that this synth is capable of, I just feel like I'm able to play way more creatively and expressively than on any other synth. I believe it, but I throw away the hours and days they turn to waste, languishing in my eternity, just weathering. I'm only you an overview of the user interface. You've got a few different pages here. This is really just like general settings on that button. But here is where you browse presets, and they're organized really well, I think. There's a lot of different categories here. Let's choose plucked, and then you can actually also choose a subcategory, and then you can use these buttons to go up and down through your presets. And if you create a variation of a preset that you want to save, you can scroll over to this save window. There's a few options to choose. You can name a patch, and then they show up on this user tab. The next big page over here is for synth settings. So each synth preset gives you a number of macros, usually somewhere between 5 and 8, I'd say. And all of the macros are individually tailored to each preset. Like, it's not the exact same parameters each time. And I feel like there's pluses and minuses to that. On the one hand, you've got really well-designed sounds where the most interesting parameters are surfaced for you. On the other hand, the sound design doesn't get quite as deep as I would like, unless you connect to the computer editor they have. So HUANG, who does the sound engine for Osmose, has this Egan matrix, and it's just this really intense synthesizer. It's got a huge amount of parameters. You can tune things into a really precise level, but it is kind of a lot to work with. I've only just dipped my toes, and I would have liked to see a bit more of a middle ground with more control on the synth itself. Like, you don't even get an amplitude envelope or a filter envelope, and I would hope that they would be able to kind of digitally add that into the firmware maybe. But you do get a huge range of sounds with hundreds of presets that each have their own handful of macros, and they're all really usable, great sounding presets. They all interact really dynamically with the different gestures. They are very expressive. Now, if we scroll over on this sub-tab, there is a set of global effects. It's all spatial stuff. It's like different reverbs and delays. I think they sound really nice. They have a lot of character. And then on top of that, if we scroll over further, you've got a basic tilt EQ that you can apply. There's also a compressor. And then over here is just some synth settings like the pitch bend slider. You can set the amount there. And then also the modulation slider. You can assign it and set its range. Actually, I haven't mentioned the pitch and mod controls here. I think they've done something so simple but genius here, which is that they're at an angle. And it kind of looks cool, but it actually makes so much ergonomic sense. Like, my arm is angled when I reach over for those controls. You can't see it in the top-down cam. You'll have to extrapolate. But it is significantly more comfortable to use these controls this way than, you know, how they typically are vertically aligned. It's just one nice, elegant little touch that they've come up with that, again, sets Osmose apart a little bit. All right, now I want to show you the arpeggiator. And with all the gestures that you have available to you on Osmose, it allows you to take a normal arpeggiator to kind of another level. So check this out. We'll go to the playing page and select arpeggiator. And you get all the typical arpeggiation controls like swing, ratcheting, octave jumps, gate length. Rise and fall, I haven't actually figured out what they do, but they do something. I've never looked at the Osmose manual, by the way. This is the one thing that I haven't been able to intuitively figure out about this synth. Now, if we go to this next sub tab, this is where things get cool. So you have two different assignments that you can make. You can choose all these different possible ways that you can modulate a sound. Let's just go to pressure and let's choose octave. We'll have a minimum of 0 and a maximum of, let's do 2. So now as I apply pressure to a note, it increases the number of octaves in the arpeggiation. Actually, maybe I'll set this to aftertouch. So my pressure, that initial period of pressing down a note doesn't change the octaves, but then I can add octaves. And remember, this is MPE. Each individual note has these expressions. So if I only apply aftertouch on one of the notes, the other notes won't have that octave effect. Let's go to our second assignment and apply, sure, the modulation slider can go to ratcheting. It's really fun to play with, but then my favorite thing I think is just arpeggiation with individual note bends. Like, how beautiful is that? That sounds really special to me because any instrument where you're able to arpeggiate, it would be extremely challenging to have just one note bending, you know, creating a bit of an independent line there while the rest of them stay steady. Like, I don't know how you would ever play that on something else. So let's do a quick little pros and cons. I mean, everything I've been talking about pretty much has been a pro. I don't even feel like I need to get too much more into that. I guess I haven't mentioned the build quality, which feels super nice, super luxurious and premium. The only thing is like some of these, the encoders and the sliders are like medium quality plastic. Everything else feels just beautiful underneath your fingers, feels really solid and hefty. I love this raised key bed. I think that's such a unique, beautiful feature, really eye-catching and aesthetically pleasing. Osmose is also an MPE controller, so you can use this same wiggle functionality and the aftertouch to control other MPE synths, whether hardware or software. The pressure glide feature, though, doesn't apply there, where Osmose is communicating within itself between two different notes about how to glide between that, and that is not an MPE feature. Pretty much the one con, which I touched on a bit earlier, is just the limitations of the sound design within the synth itself. Like, you can get super deep on the Egan matrix if you want, but I would have loved to see a little bit more, again, maybe just an amplitude envelope and filter envelope built in to what you can access on the synth settings. Even with that limitation though, it's my favorite synth in a long time. Just what they've done with the playing interface and the sounds is stunning. I just feel such a deeper connection to what I'm playing and I'm able to be more expressive. It's just a beautiful instrument. Whoa. 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 Why does it sound so much like a voice? Whoa.